2 points. Firstly, why a post-romantic template creates unequal power dynamics within relationships, which we think disproportionately hurt the vulnerable partners within their relationship, the disproportionate number of which are likely to be women. And secondly, why this just makes relationships worse in terms of generating insecurity, in terms of making sure, of reducing or deleting the incentive for you to ever try and make that relationship work if you know you can just run away when things go south. Before that, a clarification and then some points of rebuttal to what we heard from the previous speaker. The first thing I want to point out as a clarification is that finding a partner, which is a definition that we are given in the info slide on romanticism, does not mean that the partner is the only thing that is able to fulfill all your needs. What this means is that a partner happens to be the thing that ticks all the boxes, but there are other things in this world that are able to fulfill those needs as well. For instance, your job, for instance, your hobbies. What this means is simply that a partner is in a romantic world on our side of the house. If you happen to find someone that ticks all the boxes, that's good for you, but we think there are other things that you're able to pursue as well, that are able to also fulfill particular needs that you think are important. 2 responses then to what we heard from the previous speaker. The first thing we heard was that humans have multiple needs, leading to the grand conclusion that humans are just different and there were 7 billion different entities on this earth. But then they say sometimes your partners might not agree. I want to note that this does not lead to the conclusion that you should therefore go and find someone else, because it can also lead to the conclusion that maybe you should stay in the relationship and try and reach a compromise to try and make it work. The intuition part of their side of the house was never proven because they just said, if something is not right, you should just leave. But we will also point out that this is why this is likely to be worse, because if your relationship is always static, it's always at the starting point of what your preferences are, and they never evolve over time, you will never be happy as a result of that. The second point that they told us was this thing about outcomes. And the first thing they said here was about how you're going to make better life decisions. 2 responses here. The first is that we will point out that if you are in a romantic relationship or a romanticism templated relationship, you will have an incentive to improve yourself for your partner, and that will happen on the partner side as well, because you know that you are going to try and ensure that you are able to fulfill each other's preferences, crucially because preferences evolve as well. But second of all, I would like to point out that given our clarification earlier, you're still likely to know yourself. You're still likely to have other things that you are able to pursue, even if this partner happens to temporarily not be able to fulfill those needs. And we think that that's something that you can continue to talk to your partner about and try and make it work. On this point about children, I mean, it's really out of the debate. Like, children can exist in unhappy relationships on either side of the house. This is really irrelevant in this debate. So let's talk about unequal power relationships within unequal power dynamics within relationships. And as I told you earlier, that I think the reason this matters the most in this round is because there are always going to be vulnerable partners in this relationship who we think deserve protection even when they are there. We think that an open relationship or a post-romantic template is likely to disproportionately hurt them. Why is this the case? We would point out that in a post-romantic relationship, you are not committing to any particular person. That means that even if you are in a relationship with one person, you are free to explore other options and other people that you want to be with. But we will point out that in order to be able to do this, in order to have the capacity to do this, you need to have bargaining power in that relationship. And that bargaining power comes when you have security in your own interest, or security in something like your attractiveness. That means that you're able to go with and be in a relationship with someone else as well. This means that you are likely to do things like being reckless about what types of decisions you're making, because you know that you are always going to be the benefactor in this relationship. But we think that this is likely to disproportionately hurt the vulnerable partner. And here I want to respond to something that Wesley said at 7 minutes. When he said, now at least women know that that their husband is having an affair with someone else. Knowing is nothing if you are unable to do anything about it, if you are trapped in that situation and you have no other options. And here's why it is likely that a vulnerable partner will be trapped in their relationship. Very often, for instance, they are likely to be less attractive than their partner, which means that they have fewer options that they are able to go to. They will not be able to change as easily because they don't have the capacity to spread out. I'll take you in a moment, Wesley, in order to do so. And they might not therefore be able to gain access to that pool of available people and candidates in the first place. Which is why we see, for instance, in things like sugar babies and sugar daddies, for instance, sugar babies, once they are off the relationship with a sugar daddy, is very often left far worse off because they're not able to find someone else that they're able to go to. The same thing with things like hookup cultures where men have one-night stands with women, and the same thing with open relationships. Before I move on to Wesley,
So in a world where everyone adopts post-romantic, isn't there a norm of open relationships and fucking around? Why is there a need for women to bargain in that world?
Because women are still weaker than men, even in a world where everyone is sleeping around. And we think that that some women are always going to be, less attractive and less able to do so. We think that the fact that they are in that relationship means that they are going to be unable to find that, as opposed to being in a romantic relationship where they know that the person that they have found is going to stay with them, is going to try and make things work with them, and they do not have the fear and insecurity that they're going to get out. We think that this is something that disproportionately hurts those women, and we think we care about them. I'm going to explain as well a bit more why this mixed relationship on the general level works. And the reason this matters is because we don't think that just being in a relationship itself is good. We think that you ought to be happy in that relationship, and that relationship ought to last. Two things to note here. The first thing is that the people who tend to be the vulnerable partners, or at least the weaker partners in this relationship, are always going to feel insecure about their position in a relationship, even if everyone knows about it, which is what Wesley's POI was about. Why? Because they were asked whether or not they are providing enough, and why is it that they are incapable of being able to provide whatever their partner is not able to find in them, such that they have to go to someone else. They are always worried that they are not going, that what they're providing is not going to be what the partner is looking for anymore, which means that they're going to be abandoned and they're going to feel lonely. It's going to be things about whether or not they are as important as the other person that their partner is currently seeing, because they are providing someone else, and the relative positions of different relationships in their partner's mind. We think that this insecurity is absolutely devastating for the ability of these individuals to have a meaningful identity and to be able to interact both with their partners but other people around in society. But second of all, we will also observe that the comparative on outside of the house, and when you are in a romantic relationship, is that both sides actually work to be in that relationship, because they know that that this person is someone who can fulfill and is capable of fulfilling all of their needs. Why does this matter? Because on their side of the house, they would just have people run away the moment anything goes south or anything does not seem to work out. But we think that on our side of the house, you make these relationships matter. And crucially, the reason this is so important is because relationships are not always about your honeymoon. You will discover people's flaws, you will discover that people have different priorities, but at least you are staying in that relationship to try and make it work out. We think this when it comes to a romantic template, we're very, very proud to advise.
Like the video call for the speech, Deputy Prime Minister, here.
I think the first thing I want to do is just deal with the slide crop out from the opening opposition yesterday. That is that you can eventually have everything you want in your partner, and therefore it's perfectly acceptable to continue with a romantic relationship with them. They say if you want it, ask for it. And we agree. If you want it, ask for it. Right? If you want anal, ask for it. But if they eventually say no, then you're going to have to find someone else. Right? So I don't know how long they can work things out with these individuals, how long it takes to work out this particular solution. We think at the end of the day, you can maybe have a lot of things in a partner, but there will be things that you really, really want because your interests fluctuate over time, right? When you're young, you probably really, really want someone to be a companion to you. You want that idea of love, you want that relationship, you want to show off your particular partner, those kind of nonsense, right? That's important to you when you're young. When you get older and the novelty of love dies, right? You want money, you want success in your career, you want to outdo your colleagues in the office. These are all things that you might want later on, and you can't trade it off because maybe your partner wants you to be at home, maybe your partner wants you to do certain things, and they are not willing to compromise. At which point in time, what do you do, right? They will say that they suggest that you stay in that relationship, and we think that that's particularly problematic, especially for women. And it's the point of women, right? Like, sure, on their side, when these women encounter one bad relationship, they are forced to stay in that one bad relationship. On our side, If they are in one bad relationship, they can try and find other alternatives of other good relationships, right? So they can focus on their good relationships. So one particular relationship, one of emotional or physical kind, goes sour with one person, they can refocus their attention and their energy into another relationship so they can gain more utility and happiness from that one, right? So they have that option for them. But in my speech, I'm going to talk about further why is it that the idea of love is one that is largely false and misleading to most people. But before that, a quick issue on power dynamics. Realize, panel, the unequal power dynamics will exist in their relationships as well, right? In fact, we will argue that they will be worse because they would rather say there are weaker actors and stronger actors within this relationship. They would rather that the weaker actor continue to stay in that relationship even though that stronger actor is able to abuse all their power. What does this abuse look like, right? So when individuals, obviously, for example, if there is a more attractive male in that relationship and they feel like they're being held down by this other person, right? What they will do is that they'll use that to their advantage, right? They'll use that to their advantage to demand more things from that person. Like, look, I could be with any other woman I want, but I chose to stay with you. You need to concede a lot of these things to me. You need to give me the child, you need to give me 5 children, you need to contribute this much to the house, you need to cook food. Like, these are all ways people in poor power dynamics but who are forced to stay in relationships can abuse that power dynamic. Versus a concept where you're not expected, you consent to get into a relationship, but you're not expected to do these things already, right? So women can exit much earlier. And oftentimes men take advantage and abuse this power by cheating on these individuals, right? And then expecting them to forgive them for it because they say, well, look, I'm well capable of doing this. You need me more than I need you. Therefore, it's perfectly okay for me to cheat on you. Right? I think this is where it's particularly pernicious to a lot of these women who are within this weaker power dynamic within the relationship. The alternative is we give them more freedom, right? They get to consent into a relationship that gives them like the ability to focus on someone else for sex, focus on someone else for emotional well-being, focus on someone else for the money, focus on someone else to get them on top of the corporate ladder. Yeah.
Your piece is about emotionally abusive relationships. If that is true, are you actually fulfilling all of the needs as they, including sex, love, and long stability, which is what romanticism is about?
Sorry, I don't understand it.
I mean, like your piece says that the reason we want post-romantic templates is because under romanticism, people who are in emotionally abusive relationships will stay in that relationship.
Yeah.
But if that is true, if it's truly emotionally abusive, are you actually fulfilling all your needs, including sex, love, long stability, and companionship?
No, you won't lah. That's why you leave that one and then you go to another one, right? Are we on the same page here? Yeah. Cool. So let's then talk about like people who feel insecure. We will first say in response that yes, there are ugly women, but there are ugly men too, which means the free market will operate very well, right? And in this instance, it's easy for people to form proper bargains in the form of who they are qualified to date and who they are not qualified to date. And when they get into this bargain that they eventually do after like 5 years of like wanking around, trying to date other people, and then they find out that they're actually not that pretty, and then or they're not that handsome, and then they end up dating someone who's of equal market value to them. I think that's the point in time where that insecurity sort of goes away, right? That's the first response. But secondly, I think even if people do continue to feel insecure, they get into poor power dynamics with other individuals. I think that is better than a relationship with poor power dynamics where your partner is likely to sleep with other individuals without you knowing. That's a lot more discreet. That makes it a lot more harmful to you, right? I think at least on our side, they're more likely to know what they are getting into. So now the concept of love, right? It's some nebulous concept that's created to just describe intensely liking someone. Has been largely conflated with the idea that you should be with that person for the rest of your life. And this is largely because like popular media uses terms like soulmates, they use the terms like loving forever, forever after, till death do us apart, all that mumbo jumbo, right? And this is largely coercive to individuals to become part of that relationship. I don't think people are making rational choices when they do so, right? But it's just inherently true that one, a person cannot fulfill all your needs, right? The reason for this is that they just inherently have to trade things off, right? If I had a really big dick, I would be a dick because I don't need to be nice. I just get to sleep with everyone because I have a big dick, right? And like it's similarly on the other side, if you don't have a really big dick, you have to be really nice. And then, you sort of have to compensate with your personality. This is sort of trade-offs that people go through. Like if you're really ugly, you also have to have a really good personality to sort of compensate. But if you're really handsome, like you don't really have to have a really good personality, right? But just automatically like you. So these kind of socializations that people go through means that you can never have everything that you want in a person. So you have to have a guy for the big dick, and then the guy that is going to be really nice to you, the guy who's going to pay for your shit, or conversely, because I'm not sexist, right? I think these are all things that are more likely to exist. But secondly, I think the reason why this idea of love cannot exist is like, eventually these people get bored, right? And then they are going to end up divorcing anyways. So at least they save themselves the pain of going through all of those things and get into other relationships that are more meaningful to them. Happy to propose.
Yeah. Thank the DPA for that speech. Yellow, okay here.
Is it okay if I speak from here? Yeah. The fallacy here from opening government is that they believe love means not seeing anything negative about the other person, when really it's about loving people despite that essential absurdity. This debate is about whether or not you believe that commitment is an essential part of building a healthy, stable, and fulfilling relationship, or whether it is simply better to cut your losses. Speaker, panel, government is essentially running an escapist case. Sometimes people are complex and messy. In fact, no, most times people are complex and messy, and relationships are similarly complex and messy. Individuals are autonomous beings with their own thoughts and emotions and their beliefs and an interior life that is largely obscure to us. On government, because these inner feelings and thoughts are largely obscure to us, it is always easier to leave than to attempt to comprehend them. I am here to tell you that anybody worth knowing and loving is inevitably also exasperating and absurd in some way. And the answer to this absurdity is not to leave, but rather to stay and to try and build on something together. Why is it likely that this is going to happen on the government side? First of all, because emotions are complex and messy. It's often easier to run away from introspection and reflection and to follow your short-run desires. This is not the same as happiness, and they don't actually give you a reason why that's true. They simply say you can do whatever you want, as though that is a substitute for actual analysis. The second thing I want to point out is that we don't have to defend abusive relationships in our world. Kelvin spent a large portion of his speech talking about how you can hold this over your partner's head and then you will trap them in an abusive relationship and they will never be able to get out. If they are truly in an abusive relationship, we will say that doesn't fulfill the parameters on our side either, because the parameters on our side are that they fulfill your needs, and those needs include things like stability, security, and comfort. So what we are left with by the end of the opening government case is that this is essentially about sleeping around and being able to find happiness with other people. One thing to say here as framing before I start the rest of my speech, I just want to point out that when relationships tick all the boxes, it does not mean that's the only thing in your life. You can be in a romanticist relationship and still have your own hobbies, your own passions, your own jobs. It simply means that your person also ticks all of your boxes, not that there is nothing else that also does it for you. 3 points for you today. First of all, I want to talk to you about power dynamics. Second of all, I want to talk to you about transactionality. Last of all, I'm going to talk to you about the self. First of all, power dynamics. Listen, there's this old saying in society which goes, men marry who they want, women marry who they can. And I think it's a pretty accurate reflection of how power dynamics and relationships operate in today's society. Here's why women tend to bear the cost of relationships in the world we currently live in. 4 reasons. First of all, childbearing childbearing capabilities means that women are always inherently more at risk in sexual relationships than men are. These women bear not only the emotional burdens of potentially getting pregnant every time they want to sleep with someone they even find halfway attractive, they also then bear the financial burden of contraception and protection. I think that's a tremendous load on women that doesn't change on their side. The second thing is that there are a tremendous social norms and stigma against women pursuing the kinds of open relationships that OG wants them to do. OG just says, we shift the norms. Now it is normal for everyone. As an analog, I bring to you hookup culture, where among young 20-somethings, it is more the norm than not to sleep around, right? Everybody sleeps around. When they're 20-something, there are apps like Grindr and Tinder simply to facilitate these kinds of hookups. So it's as much of a norm as we get, and I think that's a good look at what government's world looks like. It looks like women being restricted in their choices because if they sleep with too many men, they are called sluts. That's not something they change on their side because you don't actually change the attitudes associated with women, which is that they're simply disposable bodies for you to stick your penis in, and you never have to call them again because, God, women are such whiny bitches after you fuck them and leave. The second thing I want to point out here is that men are actively lauded for doing this. Listen to the rhetoric in OG's speech. Oh, men get bored with just one woman, so they're going to leave. That's precisely the kind of rhetoric that displays the social stigmas and the norms surrounding how men treat women, none of which actually changes on their side. Third of all, quality of sex is just significantly worse for women just because men don't have to care about them. And last of all, the emotional labor that women do for men in things like relationships gets significantly higher at the point when you are worried and insecure that your partner is going to leave any minute. This all pretty much points to the fact that social norms are tilted in favor of one party during relationships. How does their side do anything with this? On their side, there's no reason for men to ever compromise with women over anything at all. Because if they don't like it according to OG, they can just get up and leave. It is always easier to leave than to attempt to figure out why the woman you are probably dating or sleeping with seems to have some disagreements with you, or seems to believe that you should wash the dishes, or seems to believe that maybe you should make her come along with coming yourself. I think all of this basically means you are free to get up and leave wherever, whenever, without the attendant emotional baggage that comes with being in a relationship. On our side, the norms equalize in favor of women. Why? Because it gives them some form of justification in asking men for things, because they believe that they deserve to have a partner that fulfills all their needs, because they believe they deserve to have a partner that provides them emotional stability and security in addition to sex, because they believe they should have a partner that presents them with actual benefits. They feel justified in asking them for things, and the social norm tilts men in favor of responding to these rather than telling men that they can leave whenever you want. The second thing I want to talk to you about is transactionality. Listen, if we want the rewards of being loved, we must submit to the mortifying ordeal that is being known. I think it is bad when we change the lens through which we view individuals, when instead of viewing them as autonomous beings with rich inner lives that we should value and cater to, we shift to seeing them based on how they benefit us. I think this kind of mindset actually increases norms tilted in favor of men, because it teaches them to continue treating their partners as disposable, as people that you can use for whatever value they bring to you and move on. OG seems to think this is a good thing because, if you're not fulfilled in one way, just go find someone else that will fulfill you. But essentially, you are seeing people with real identities as interchangeable and valueless, except for how much they mean to you. And I think that's an abhorrent way to view people on a principle level. Last of all, I want to talk to you about the self. Self-discovery is something that happens in our world too, because surprisingly, when people love you for everything that you are, instead of constantly threatening to up and leave because you don't fit their perceptions, they're probably likely to also affirm and support your passions and desires. Even if you don't buy this, presumably you want to self-improve for your partner in some way, so there is some kind of level of self-discovery going on there. Compare this to what Andrew told you, which is that you have tremendous insecurity at the point where you believe that you yourself are yet another huge, interchangeable, objectified piece in somebody else's life, where your value is always temporary, always transactional, and ceases to be the moment you stop being useful. I think it's a terrible way to view anyone. I think this disproportionately harms women. Very proud to oppose.
And then the other for that speech, now the closing exchange member of God here.
By the end of my speech, I will have proved to you two things. Firstly, human beings are not perfect, and it's unfair for us to tie them to that expectation that they have to be the most fulfilling person they can be to whoever they might be obliged to be in a relationship with. But secondly, I'm going to compare with how our world fixes societal norms and the societal obligations that ties you to a certain relationship. All of my responses will be integrated within my extension. Firstly, human beings are not perfect. The current standards of a successful relationship ensures that any act of fulfilling a need or desire outside of a relationship is considered as disloyal. This is not just left to just sex or your emotional capabilities, but also the ability for you to move away for a career, for you to start or for you to ask to get money from someone else or to do anything that is within your own self-benefit, but is not seen or deemed as correct in a relationship. What does this mean? This means that not every individual can realistically fulfill these requirements. Unfortunately, we think these standards are more likely to be enforced on site opposition. Why is this important? This is important because there are higher levels of expectations when it comes to what a good relationship should look like, and we think that is unfair. They say that we have an incentive to improve ourselves inside opposition, and we must retain, no thank you, we must retain some level of commitment in order to improve ourselves. I think that's unfair of a burden to place on individuals. We think that a lot of things are not within our control. If Kelvin has a small dick, how is he going to solve that problem? If we don't have enough money, we don't think we can just make money come out of thin air. We don't think we are capable to just fix a lot of problems that are sometimes more often and not inherent within our personalities and things that we have grown up with. I think it's unfair for you to say that, yes, we must invest our commitment, invest our time so that we can improve ourselves. That is unfair. No, thank you. But what happens when individuals fail? Three things happen. Firstly, we think that under side opposition, you're more likely to determine or doom a relationship. Relationships are more likely to be damaged when there's higher of an expectation of what a good relationship should look like. I think those higher expectations are bad. But secondly, under that side of the house, when individuals cannot find a legitimate way of fulfilling those needs or criteria, they have to resort to channels such as cheating. The problem with cheating is that it hurts even more on the side of opposition when the value of you fulfilling your needs elsewhere is even more harmful as compared to government, where we say it's okay for you to fulfill your needs elsewhere. But thirdly, we think that people are already bad in relationships in status quo. That means men already treat women badly. Men sometimes dick around and they sleep with other women as well. But I think that it becomes even worse on that side of the house because we don't want women to be obliged to stay in a world where relationships are not just based off the traditional ideas of love. Women are more likely to be able to evaluate a relationship under side government and say that, yeah, this guy is not good enough for me. He has not been completely loyal or faithful to me. He has not been able to fulfill my needs. It's much more easier to leave that relationship on side of government, and I think that's better on our side. Sure.
So a lot of stuff, unlike big size, like emotional attributes, patience, discussion, communication, compromise, can all be worked on. Why teach women that they should have to settle for a relationship with none of these things instead of incentivizing men to actually bother self-improving?
Okay, for one, I don't think that it's just men who are complete dicks. I think I'm a nice guy. I think that all of these arbitrary, all of these things such as the ability for you to communicate are not always easily fixed. I think that also these things, just being able to communicate openly, sometimes you cannot just say, yeah, you must be open, express all of your feelings. But in a relationship, you're more open to that discussion. We think that you can have more successful relationships simply because you can fulfill those needs elsewhere. But secondly, we think that we are more likely to openly identify our own needs and desires. We can tell ourselves and decide for ourselves what is good in a relationship when we can openly say to one another, when we can openly fulfill those needs. I think a world where we can determine for ourselves what a good relationship is better in and of itself. But secondly, we think we make relationships more inclusive. First reason why is because we simply lower the expectations within a relationship. When you don't have to oblige a certain partner to fulfill every single obligation within a relationship, it's fine for you to just be that emotional connection. It's fine for you to just be that fuck buddy. I think that lower level of expectation means you're more likely to be involved in a relationship in the first place. But secondly, we think that on the idea that people would be insecure, I think people are more likely to be insecure. They're going to be rejected because they cannot fulfill all of your requirements. In a world where you glorify being able to fulfill love, sex, money, power, all of that, I think you are less likely to be able to be involved in a relationship. But thirdly, on the idea of like social norms and stigma, I think this is like a value judgment debate where we can assume that it becomes the majority culture. Like we prefer a world where we adopt like this post-romantic template. I think it's more likely that we can assume that the societal norm would be mitigated even if it's in the long term because we adopt it in a majority sense. The third impact of this is that we would be able to leave relationships in a healthier manner. Two reasons why. Firstly, because we think there's less shame that is tied to you when you leave the relationship. In our world, it is easier to justify leaving simply because you don't feel that the relationship was fulfilling enough. When you don't feel that that person made you happy enough, it's more okay for us to leave and find more meaningful relationships. It's unfair for you to tie individuals down simply because they've already found a person. They are more likely to be locked down to a harmful relationship on that side of the house. What happens then? We think that when individuals are shamed when they leave a relationship, they're more likely to face that disappointment. That means they're less likely to be involved in relationships because of maybe emotional trauma or the fear of being disappointed in a relationship. Again, I think that means on that side of the house, they're more likely to lose out on the happiness that you can get from being involved in a relationship. The physical intimacy and emotional connections gone on side of opposition. But most importantly, we think that you are more able to make practical decisions before and throughout the relationship. That means you're more likely to have open discussions or what is needed. Prenuptials are more likely to be discussed and negotiated. You're less likely to do stupid decisions like have a joint bank account. So like when you break up and everything, it's so hard. And I think that's on the side of government, we are more likely to be able to provide a much more healthier relationship and better options for individuals on the ground. Thank you.
All right, thank you, member of government. That speech, here.
I don't know why the debate thus far has been so complicating and opening half, but I know for one reason, and it is that no one universally talked about where people are generally more fulfilled in their relationships that they enter into, because there's no universal metric that was discussed in opening half and also in the speaker before me as to how do we actually gauge whether people are happier off in their relationships and what necessarily decides that. And we think that answer comes exclusively from closing opposition when we tell you that first, it comes through setting manageable expectations, but it also comes through knowing that in the relationships that you're going to be in, settling for mediocrity is going to be something that's just generally better for you. So in closing opposition, we concede that opening government maybe is correct, partially also closing government, that you are likely not going to be able to get into a relationship where everyone fulfills everything greatly. So maybe you will have above average sex for the rest of your life with some romantic gestures here and there. But we tell you in a world of closing opposition, where we remain under romantic framework, is a world where people manage those expectations, and that directly means that you have more fulfillment. The world of opening government and closing government is one where expectations will be set at an astronomically high level. Before I talk about my argumentations and responsive intersections within, I want to do some world building first, because I don't think the opening half talks about the norms and how norms interact with each other. The first thing I want to say is, in the post-romantic world of opening government and closing government, you will still have individuals that have partners who can fulfill all those three needs. And the reason for this is quite simple, because those people exist. There are people who exist who want romantic, sexual, and companionship, and there are also people who exist who can give all those three things. So there will be a selective portion, maybe not as big as the world that we're living in right now, of people who get into relationships where you have one partner who give all to that person. What happens to this is that we think there's going to be a premium placed on the individual who can get all of these kinds of standards with all of those fulfillments within that single relationship. Why do we think this is true? Because number one, we think it's just convenience, right? Like you can get one person who gives you everything. That's a great thing compared to having to individually pursue everything and go through the struggles and anxiety of having to individually pursue different individuals to fulfill your specific needs. So for all those reasons, we think there will be a premium placed on this individual. And that I think that world building is important because that's how people interact connect with these individuals that exist. That then this means that because there's a celebration of these individuals, how does this then harm the individuals? Let's talk about expectations really quick and how this directly correlates to relationships becoming significantly worse in government. In a world where people already know that these people exist, they are now empowered to find happiness in their own pursuits because they look at other people and they say, oh, look, you have found one person who can give you all of these things. I now want that same amount of happiness. But there's an issue here because for those people, they would have to go through individual pursuits to get every different need to be fulfilled by different people. So the reality is a lot of those people won't be able to get a lot of those relationships, or maybe they'll tick some boxes but won't tick all those boxes. What do they do then in this instance? Fueled by the dissatisfaction that there are people out there who have found one person to give them all that satisfaction. Double with the fact that they cannot fulfill all those needs because now you have to find different individuals for every different need. You now are now going to expect more from the relationships that you currently have. This dissatisfaction that exists is the reason why the relationships that they have under their work, albeit romantic only, albeit sexual only, will have significantly higher expectations because you want to fill that void in your heart, knowing that you don't have a sexual partner, but you want a sexual partner, but you don't want this person to be a sexual partner, but you want only romantic things out of this person. You would expect a lot more from this person. This looks like being unfulfilled by just basic romantic gestures, but expecting significantly more from this person because you want to fulfill that void that you have of happiness and fulfillment in your heart. So if you are romantic and you don't do romantic enough gestures, you're not going to be happy because you expect a whole lot more because society, people around you have managed to find happiness elsewhere. If you get into a sexual relationship, you expect it to be really, really hot, right? Have washboard abs or have a big dick that Calvin was talking about in his speech, because all of those things mean that you have an amazing sexual experience to fill that void that you weren't able to get in the world where you can't get all those other relationships. The conclusion to this is really just quite simple, is that the world where there are higher expectations is the world where you don't manage those expectations. That's why people just continually live in a void of being significantly unfulfilled. No thank you. But the next thing I want to talk about really quickly, which is a responsive extension to opening government and also closing government, is this idea of how you can have everything, therefore you don't need to compromise anymore, you can just go for it and just get everything in your life, right? I don't think this is necessarily true. Hear me out. The first thing I want to say is, in life, we give up a lot of things because things are relatively more important than other things. So for example, if you want anal, but you also want a very, very loving partner, and you're willing to give that up to get that loving partner and to be romantically treated every single day of your life, that is a valid trade-off that people can make and they are willing to make. So you can process those kinds of sadness that you get by virtue of compromising, because every time your partner gets you a bouquet, you realize, maybe anal wasn't really that big of a trade-off because I'm really, really happy now, right? You process all this sadness and realize that the compromise is fine because it doesn't really harm you because you've gotten something that gives you more net happiness. But let me also argue to you that compromise itself means that people are more likely going to try on those relationships and are more likely going to give those relationships a second chance. This is untrue. The relationships, just so far as they are mildly inconvenient, is not deserving of the pursuit. We argue to you that in OG and CG, the threshold to leave those relationships are significantly lower. And I will admit, or they talk about this, but they don't talk about the harm of why this is harmful. Because oftentimes these people cannot jump into another relationship really quickly because they have to go through a lag period of finding someone else to give them the same amount of satisfaction, or to have to even just go through the barriers of like looking for a partner all over again means that you are emotionally exhausted. All these things are self-imposed. The comparative is in a world where you lower your threshold, the threshold to leave the relationship is higher, and you've made the compromise. You work through things. You get that happiness that you are able to get under our world, because sometimes in relationships, second chances are actually quite valuable, and you actually can get the same type of happiness. Before that, sure.
So, firstly, why would there be a sizable number of people who have this godlike all three characteristics to reasonably create an expectation? And even if there is a sizable number, they exist on your side also to create that same expectation.
There doesn't have to be the same sizable number, because people will still expect, even though they're in a shitty relationship, they'll expect more from you and you will still be unfulfilled. Remember, the deciding factor is expectations. Lastly, and really quickly, let's talk about the counterfactual and the comparative. We told you under our world, when people manage those expectations, they are more likely going to realize that one person doesn't have to fulfill every part of my life to the greatest extent, that I'm willing to accept it because one person is giving me everything. So by virtue of this person being able to give me everything, I'm going to manage my expectation and say that this person is there for me through all those facets. That's why I'm more likely going to be happier with this person. But the second thing I'm also going to say within this is that self-exploration is significantly better. And this is different from opening opposition. occasionally, sometimes people get into sexual relationships and then fall in love with this person. People get into romantic relationships and end up wanting to have sex with this person. The world of OG and CG is a world people get boxed out. When you develop feelings, because the relationship and contractually is just only for romance and only for sex, you cannot admit to the other person. It's already happening in a world right now where people go for one night stands and cannot admit that they have feelings for the other person. Those standards and those expectations become significantly higher in OG and CG. You can never break out. You will have significantly unsatisfied people. Really quickly, what do we prove? The first, we told the norm forces people to raise expectations. Number two, we told the norm makes people significantly unfulfilled in those relationships. And lastly, it alienates and harms people who want to hybridize for those relationships. For all those reasons, manage those expectations in closing opposition.
Thank the member to that speech. Start with India.
So I think this has been firstly an extremely confusing debate, but I think that side of closing government can win this debate by proving two things. The first being on which side do vulnerable people get hurt more, and the second being why relationships are more likely to fail on the side of opposition, and how when they fail, this will be more devastating to the individuals involved. But before that, I just have three quick responses to Krupi's speech. The first is the idea about setting reasonable expectations, right? I don't understand why that's a good thing in the first place. Why would you settle for one person who can fulfill all your standards mediocrely, rather than in our world when you're able to pick and choose of the best and attain the most happiness possible, right? So the second idea that Krupi says is it's very inconvenient to find several partners to fulfill one specific need, right? So I think this is kind of unreasonable, because in our world, it's not that you're searching out to find one person who can fulfill your sexual needs, one person who can fulfill your emotional needs. I think maybe you can find one person who can fulfill both love and sex, and then another person who can fulfill money, right? So I think they're really seriously overvaluing the trouble and how harmful that is. I don't think that's a really big harm on our side at all. So the third response I have is the idea of how on our side, we will have increased expectations. When we choose a sexual partner, we will expect them to be increasingly excellent at sex or whatever. So I feel this isn't realistic. So for example, if I choose you to have anal, it's probably because I already had anal with you and I was oh yeah, you're pretty good at anal, so yeah, I choose you, right? So it's not gonna be why would I already know how good you are, right? So why would I suddenly expect you to be amazing at anal? So I just don't think that made sense at all. What's the comparative on op, right? On op, there's already a narrative that one partner has to be giving me everything. One partner has to fulfill all these criteria. So they're gonna expect that partner to be able to do everything. And when that partner is not able to fulfill these things, they're gonna be even more disappointed, right? So before that, I'll take closing.
Yeah. So given that under your world, there's a higher probability of people only being in and ticking one box, for example, because they have to go through barriers to access different types of relationships, and they might fail. If they're only in a romantic relationship but they also want a sexual and relationship elsewhere that don't have it, why would they escalate the expectations in the relationship that they're currently in?
What? Can you repeat?
Okay, now they are in a romantic relationship, but they want romantic, sexual, and companionship. They don't have sexual and companionship. Because they don't have here, why would they raise expectations here to fill the void of loss of happiness here?
What? I don't understand. Why are they raising expectations at all? Why can't you just pick and choose and yeah, I don't understand, sorry. Yeah, so moving on to my substantive, on which side do vulnerable people get hurt the most, right? Because opening tried to come in and say on our side, women are going to be hurt so much more. So I think something that needs to be clarified is that vulnerable people will still exist on both sides, right? On op, there's still going to be one partner who's always going to be more unattractive than the other. This doesn't change. I think the thing that changes is things get a lot better on our side when the women know what they're getting into. Because on our side, when a partner sleeps with someone else, the woman already knows that a partner is going to sleep with someone else because they're not in the relationship for the sex, they're in it for like the companionship or love. Like, and it also works the other way around, right? Like maybe she got in a relationship because like she likes the guy's personality. So I think it could be empowering for women on our side when they don't have to depend on one man for everything, because as they explain, like men sometimes can be unreliable. I don't think they're a good like source of like achieving everything, right? So what's the comparative? I think on their side, women will be more devastated because like as like we've already mentioned, like there's still gonna be like you trying to find that outlet, and that outlet will be cheating. So on the side of opposition, like women will be more devastated because the man tries to like go out and fulfill that sexual need, and like it's gonna be more hurtful because she's not expecting it and she's expecting everything from that one partner. Besides that, I think that on our side, women will actually be more empowered because they're no longer fed the narrative that they have to get everything out of their life. They have to fulfill like all their needs from a man, right? Like, because like opening up seems to think that the best option is for a woman to be dependent on a man for everything. We don't think this is true. In our world, like at least like we have the narrative that long-term stability can come from other options, like for example the career. Like it's more likely that on our side a woman will invest more time into her career and be able to like self-sustain because she's not fed the narrative that she has to get everything from a man. So we think that these vulnerable people that they try to talk about will actually benefit a lot more on our side. Okay.
So, like, real question. Do you honestly believe that you couldn't love somebody who isn't perfect? Does this person have to provide you with perfect companionship 24/7? Could you love someone despite their flaws?
Okay. Yeah, so like we're not saying that you can't love someone, right? We're saying that on your side, there's like a higher chance, like there's a stronger narrative that you're trying to get all these things from that one person. So while you still may love that person, you're more likely to be disappointed by that person when they can't fulfill all those needs, right? So why are relationships more likely to fail on the side of opposition, and why the impact will be far worse? So we already told you how in our world, individuals seek to start relationships in a different way, right? Where like they start relationships based on already like from the get-go what they can get out of that relationship. So when you approach someone in our world, you already have like a specific purpose, like, oh, I'm approaching you because I want you to pay for like all my shit. Like, so like they are based on attributes they already have. Whilst in the side of opposition, you're finding a partner who can fulfill all those things, even though they may not necessarily already possess those attributes or specific purposes, right? So the problem with both side opposition is they assume that like partners can change, they can like evolve to be a perfect partner over time. However, like we think that's so like that's not true, right? Like changing is so hard. I think it's a lot easier on our side because we're already picking partners based on attributes they already have, and this is like much better because because like when partners don't, like we already pick partners based on what they have. And on the side of opposition, when partners don't change, when partners are not able to fulfill all these needs, they feel a lot more disappointed because they're expecting so much from that one partner, and that one partner must fulfill everything. And then so like for example, like a breakup on side opposition versus our side, right? Like I think opening touch, but like I think we explained it a lot more. For example, like prenups, like how on like side opposition, because you expect a relationship to last forever, because you expect love, etc., you're less likely to get to accept a prenup. Whereas in our side, like because we like get into a relationship like for like the money, we're like less likely to like be offended by something like that, right? So breakups are a lot easier on our side. Besides that, like what's the narrative on op, right? Like you have to get everything from one partner. And I think on side opposition, that leads to a lot more disappointment and resentment in the long term. And for all those reasons, I think we take this debate.
Thank you, Godfrey, for that speech. Off with Gideon.
It is true that humans aren't perfect, but we can be near perfect to another, and this can only happen when people view another person as a whole and their traits combined as compared to their individual smaller traits that they assess separately. So for example, I can love you as a whole, and because you are really good in love and companionship, that can compensate for your lack in sex, for example. We think that people can love people more when people view other individuals as a whole rather than the smaller traits that more people are already born inferior with. I think under our world, for example, can accept people because of their companionship companionship, they can compensate for you being poor, for example. We think this is a world where people are more likely to be celebrated by the strengths and weaknesses that they already have, as compared to your world when the weakness is the reason why they can't get that one specific thing that they want out of life. People who are born, for example, not really sexually attractive are the ones in your world that are less likely going to get this need fulfilled. People who are born with anxiety, for example, are the ones in your world who can't get that companionship because just generally they are not that best of a partner in that specific aspect. We think when you view people in general, these are the individuals that can also benefit because you are okay with them not being okay with other things, because you can compensate that with all the other good things that they can provide for you. And I think that is a world where you accept a lot of individuals more as compared to your world. They give the premium to people who are nearly perfect in all these aspects. But before that, what did OO tell you, and how did we differentiate from O, and why is our side more important? So OO talk about mostly women, also minorities, and how they can feel good in this relationship. But we think we told you about how you can actually manage expectations in relationship across everyone who's involved in it. We also told you about how we can have setting to mediocrity, and why that's better because like apparently I think most people are like mediocre. We're not really that good of human beings. But also I think another thing that we've already told you, that the bar would significantly be higher in the world of government. The reason why this is true is because although you can have these separate relationships, you will still have some people who have it all. Still have someone who have that one partner that can provide you everything. And the reason why, even though they say this exists in the minority, the reason why people would still aim to have that is because it's just more convenient for you to have one person that you can have everything from. We think because of that, under your world, the expectation will be significantly high because you want to find that one person. But then again, you can't really say it out. The reason why you can't do that is because your relationship with one person is more likely to be like a one aspect relationship. So you having a relationship with this person is just based on sex. You having a relationship with this one person just based on companionship. You are less likely to talk about your other needs towards this person because your relationship is only limited to that. The reason why this is harmful is because for people who can't find sexual partners, for example, there is no way to communicate this with other people because all the relationships with other people are only based on this one specific aspect, and I shouldn't cross the lines by making it intersectional. But we think that under our the expectations are lower because you still think that this person is the best, and because they can give us everything, even though not perfect in every single aspect, but at least they can provide us all the things that other people can't. I think also an important thing from closing opposition that they didn't respond to was how people can actually develop feelings, because the moment when you don't box relationships, you are more likely to escalate the relationship and also make the relationship better. Under your world, if people just start as sexual partners and the moment that they develop more feelings, we think that they are more likely to be silenced because they are more likely to feel that they don't want to admit their feelings beyond the sexual relationship. We think that because of that, people are less likely to feel happy because they cannot voice out certain things because they fear to be seen as someone who is selfish, someone that's very needy in a relationship. But the next thing, so let's deal with closing first. So closing tells us that there is now a higher expectation under your world. So I think number one, under your world, there's even a higher expectation on specific factors. So for example, if you want a sexual partner, obviously you want someone that can give you the best sex experience. Or if you want a companionship, obviously you want someone who can cater to you the most. We think the expectations will always increase because these are specific things that you need. There's no other thing that you can compensate it with. So if this person is not good in bed, there's no other reason why you can accept this person as a sexual partner, for example. We think it's a lot harder because you increase this expectation for these individuals. Also, number two, I think it is worse if you don't have, for example, a sexual partner and you need this specific this aspect to be fulfilled. We think that you are more likely to compensate, so you are more to focus in your other relationship because you can't find happiness in this one aspect. This easily dismisses by saying you still can pick and choose people. I don't think that is easy because I don't think everyone have good traits that people are generally interested in. I think people are good in certain things, bad in certain things, and those people who are weak under your world in the specific aspect cannot get the fulfillment from that one aspect. We think it's important for people to actually get all of these aspects combined. But then they say they can at least communicate their needs and desires in a world where you have these different type of people. So we think number one, maybe, but your communication stops when number one, you are no longer within the frame of your specific relationship. Also number two, it is not what your partner wants from you. So when you're a bit too whiny, when you're a bit too needy, it is more likely for the partner to leave you because that's the only thing the relationship is based on. Companionship, for example. Within the world, relationship is more dynamic, it's based on different things. Like your one weakness can still be overlooked by your partner. But I think the comparative underside government is that the competitive on ours, that relationship can evolve from where they truly start. So maybe the first time I love you is because of this one thing, and I don't like this one weakness from you. But I think we can actually evolve and compromise in certain things, and that can actually make the relationship better. We can slowly start to like this person. We can slowly change our preference, and that can only happen in the world. You already love someone, and you want to evolve with that person, as compared to easy living that is inside government. But the next thing is how they say leaving. We think that leaving is actually bad because under your work will actually prematurely leave when they know that they couldn't make it work. We think that's bad because that means in your next relationship, when it's not as good as your previous one, you regret leaving. You regret because now you need to find that relationship that is as good as your previous one. We think it's better for people to take more time thinking whether or not they want to leave, so that they are less likely to regret it in the future. Before that, sure.
So sure, in some cases you may want love from your fuck buddy, but normally it's an exception. But in all, the comparative is your partner is always expected to fulfill all your needs. Isn't that more disappointing? But secondly, if it's mediocre, how can he also be just as good?
So number one, I think just because this is an anomaly doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Like if it's an anomaly but affects someone greatly, I think you should still consider that in the debate. But also number two, I think you are more likely to accept these people because you view them as a whole rather than the specific aspects that they have. You are more likely to overlook one aspect because that person is a good in another. I think you are more likely to settle to these things as compared to viewing things individually. The next thing, so opening government talk about this power dynamics. I think power dynamics is worse in a world where things are viewed as specific. In a world where it's more complex, it's very difficult for you to identify the dynamics because one partner might be good in one thing, one partner might be good in another. But when your relationships are more specific, it is easier to see who's better in that type of specific relationship. We think because of that, it's harder for people who are more vulnerable in this instance because they are less likely to be celebrated in that one specific aspect. The reason why this is bad is because people still need to be acknowledged. So, for example, people don't have if people feel inferior in that aspect, there's no way for them to compensate because they know that they're bad in that specific aspect. And this relationship evolves as a relationship in general as a whole. People are more likely to think that I'm not that inferior because there are other things that I'm better at than the partner. But you prevent that when the relationship is too specific. You prevent people to feel good about themselves.
Thank all teams for the debate. Please cross Pohtato Cats and results will be announced later. Thank you.